All right, everyone. Another day, another Ron DeSantis gaffe. Of course, he's attempting to paste Biden, I think, at this point. He's linked in the description, archived, of course. He's now attempting to insinuate that Donald Trump is responsible for colluding with big tech to censor the Hunter Biden laptop story. I shit you not, when I saw this, I figured they made a typo and that he was referring to Joe Biden. When I saw the tweet that carried out this news story, I'm like, oh, ha 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 ha, the Hill, they had a really funny grammatical error here. But no, it's actually Ron DeSantis attempting to blame shift to Donald Trump. Now, I tried to ask myself if this made any sense whatsoever, and I'm drawing a blank. Now, there is a context here. The context is, of course, that Trump's own agencies were the ones colluding with big tech to censor this story. That is true. It's factual. The problem is twofold. First, the insinuation that Trump somehow was involved with that, which wouldn't make any goddamn sense whatsoever. Why would you screw your own campaign? You get tired of the position? I don't think so, Ron. I think that Trump did actually intend to win the campaign fair and square. Secondly, we know, for example, that Donald Trump was misled for several years by his own Syrian envoy. Now, keep in mind, the President of the United States is the Commander-in-Chief. There's really not much room for dissent down the line in military scenarios overseas. Domestically, there could be. There could be some defections if martial law were declared or something like that, but in overseas territory, if you are going to have combat operations, the President is the one that calls the shots, and of course holds meetings with the generals, and they hold meetings with the lower down command, and so on and so on forth. Very hierarchical system. We know that he was misled by his Syrian envoy on a number of occasions about troop totals in Syria. Having decided to draw down most of the troops there, the troops were not drawn down, but the envoy lied to him flat out and said that they had. If that's the case, can we just observe the situation and say that large numbers of bureaucrats and other individuals within the government were breaching the Constitution by not following lawful orders? Because that's what really happened. Donald Trump cannot... Ron DeSantis is hoping that his fans don't understand one very important aspect of this situation, and here's the second point. The bureaucracy has gotten so large, it is not possible for the actual elected government to keep tabs on everything. Bureaucracy at this point, at least at the federal level, is responsible for most of the rules people have to follow and most of the problems in the country. Ron DeSantis should be coming out and simply saying we need to axe large swaths of the bureaucracy and rein them back in. And he has alluded to that. For example, a desire to get rid of the Department of Education. Well, that's good, although I think Trump has the same idea, and I think half the other GOP candidates have at least paid it lip service, Ramaswamy, I believe, among them. And that's because the Department of Education doesn't really have a meaningful role. It gets bigger and bigger, it gets more and more money, and yet the educational ranking keeps falling. And it ain't the state's fault. In many cases, some of the states have improved slowly over time. It's because of the Department of Education instituting massive federal rules that dumb down education and inject it with a bunch of filler. So, the kids don't need to spend 6 weeks in math class learning about wokeness. It's not really necessary. I can appreciate Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump both coming out against DEI and things of that nature, the ESG scores and critical race theory and so forth. That's perfectly fine. But it's the bureaucracy's fault, by and large. Donald Trump cannot micromanage everything that happens within the federal bureaucracy, nor would Ron DeSantis. For all of his bravado, if Ron DeSantis were elected, he would face the same problem. I would point out that if he does indeed have similar ideological views to Donald Trump, he would face the same obstruction, and he would not be capable of stopping it. What needs to be done is a full audit of the bureaucracy, a massive slash to its size, etc., etc., etc. Blaming Trump for a problem that he himself did not cause, could not have done anything about, and probably originally never even foresaw, is completely disingenuous. The insinuation that Donald Trump also had something to do, the way that this is phrased, and I don't think this is the intent from Ron DeSantis, the way it's phrased, it makes it look like you're saying that Donald Trump played a role in his own presidential ambitions being lost. no reasonable person would consider that to be a valid conjecture. No reasonable person. The only people that have said indeed something similar were a handful of TDS sufferers in the 2016 election, actually, who assured me that Donald Trump had no intent of winning. They thought Hillary Clinton was down pat. Ironclad, she wins. 99.999% chance is basically what the New York Times said. You'll remember that on that epic election night. Watching that little meter slowly crawl in Trump's direction was quite interesting. They assumed that, and so they just came out to cover and said, well, he doesn't even want to win. We don't think that he was serious about winning the primaries. Now he's stuck, and he doesn't have any intention of winning the general. He's trying to sell steaks. He's trying to sell a book or so. I mean, it's classic TDS. I see a lot of the same attack lines from people who support DeSantis are effectively nothing more than rehash of 2016 coming from the left. It basically sounds the same. In fact, sometimes I would like to conduct an experiment. Take quotes from liberals in 2016, bad-mouthing Trump. He's a, the tax dodger, orange man bad, in a million different ways. And then ascribe them to like a DeSantis fan or DeSantis himself and see how many people believe that the quote is real. I bet it'd be most of them because they sound about the same. This is beyond the pale. It's yet another mistake that DeSantis is making. If Ron DeSantis were nominated, I do not believe that he will be, but if he is, he can't piss off the entire MAGA core and have any hope of winning in a general election. Trump has more latitude as a general candidate than Ron DeSantis does, simply because there is that large core of support that will fly the coop. If Trump lost and he decided to run independent or he refused to endorse or whatever the eventual nominee, that person would inevitably lose. It wouldn't be possible for them to get enough votes to win. You'd have to win half the Democratic voters in order to win. You wouldn't get any higher turnout. And you'd think that you'd have to go after independents too, but with a platform like Ron's or Don's for that matter, independents are going to be split. And you're not going to need all of them in order to win the election if you don't have MAGA to compensate. Even then, I don't think it would compensate enough. I think he'd still lose. We'd be looking at a situation where, short of the Dem nominee being Biden and a month before the election he collapses on stage or something, I mean, it's almost like Ron DeSantis is hoping that Trump is arrested and then Biden croaks right before the election, and that's his Hail Mary. That's what his campaign feels like. He's flush with money. He's outraising Donald Trump because he's willing to suck corporate cock more. We've seen this before with people like Jeb. Ted Cruz had a lot of fundraising in 2016 for a while. Hillary certainly outraised and outspent. A huge amount of money, but then he's spending his time doing this. Well, I mean, it's fine to attack Trump, and you should. I mean, he's your opponent. That makes sense. But can you at least think of a way to do that without being completely disingenuous? Trump's idea of attack is just calling him a son of a bitch, and this is considered to be beyond the pale. But when Ron DeSantis effectively simps for the big tech collusion by insinuating that somehow it was Trump's fault and not the fault of an out-of-control unipartyist bureaucracy, which Trump was warning about at the time, and that the lies extended to bureaus that Trump clearly did not have control of because they were actively at some level colluding to stop him, blaming Trump for that is nonsensical in every possible way, shape, and form. So I got a good laugh about it. Again, when I first saw the tweet that summed up the article, I assumed that they had made a drastic spelling error. I had expected that they accidentally put in Ron DeSantis for where they meant Joe Biden. That's about all. Peace out.